Well, welcome into the latest episode of the HuddleUK podcast, episode 15, where we're continuing our divisions. We're going through them all one by one, and today we're doing the home of the Super Bowl champions. We're doing the NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles, improving Washington Commanders, and then the Giants and the Cowboys, of course, will be hoping to take a step forward in 2025, hopefully a very competitive division. We're going to be speaking to three HuddleUK writers today, and for the Giants, we've got a special guest on as well. We've got Aaron from Big Blue, one of the biggest Giants podcasts around, so we'll be plugging that when we speak to Aaron. Just to quickly say at the start, both the Giants and the Detroit Lions, we currently have a gap in our writers pool for HuddleUK. So if you're a fan of the Giants or the Lions and would like to join the team, please get in touch using the email address admin@huddleuk.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get some content. Make sure that we're preaching to all 32 teams. If you're a fan of any team, you'll find content over at huddleuk.com. And here on the podcast, I think this is the sixth or the fifth division that we've covered. We'll do the other three. We will get to all of them, I am sure. Before we get into all the four teams as well, the courtesy plug at the start, please, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember to click that subscribe button, ring the bell as well, so you get the notifications for all the new videos we'll have. Of course, all the clips from this podcast and all the other ones that we've done so far are over on YouTube. They're on TikTok, Instagram, and of course on X. We're at Join the Huddle UK on almost all social media sites. Over on Facebook, just simply HuddleUK. So go follow us wherever you might be. Give us a like, give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from it. And as I said, if you're interested in joining the team as a Giants or Lions writer, let us know, or any other team. We'd love to hear from you. Get in touch on emails, because we're going to be expanding our writer base at some point, and the more people we can have lined up, the better to accommodate to the rest of you UK fans listening. Thank you very much for the support as well that you've given us. About 6 months into the project now. We're looking forward to doing get-togethers during the games in London, and maybe even the ones in Europe if we're feeling a bit adventurous later on in the year. Anyway, that's enough of my rambling. We're going to start off the episode like always. We're going to go through the teams in reverse order. We're going to start with the Giants, then the Cowboys, Commanders, and finish off with Nathan, the Eagles writer, who we've had on a few times before. But without further ado, as I mentioned, we're going to start off with Aaron Gilbraith, who's one of the podcast analysts at Big Blue UK and Ireland. Well, kicking us off, as always, we're going to go in reverse order of teams, and we're going to start with the New York Giants. At present, at the time of recording at least, we don't have a Giants writer for HuddleUK, so we've had to go outside sourcing, and we're delighted to have Aaron Gilbraith from the Big Blue podcast. Aaron, I think it says on your profile you're the analyst, are you, for the show?
Yeah, the boys are from the show brought me on a couple of weeks ago to be a full-time analyst, to be the fifth member, I played brick ball for a number of years as an offensive lineman, and obviously everyone loves the offensive line breakdowns that I can give. So yeah, come on to talk about that, and generally my love for the Giants.
As an O-lineman yourself, I think it's probably an area of the game that's a bit underappreciated. People want to look at the flashy plays, the wide receivers, the running backs and that, but that nitty-gritty in the trenches stuff, is that your bread and butter?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone loves the flashy receivers, right? We all put them in our fantasy team. We can all talk about that, but the O lineman, there's not really a stat that you can look at. Maybe the number of sacks they give up. Obviously, PFF had started to do a little bit of grading and stuff around it. But what does a 65 passing grade really mean, right? And what does that mean on tape? And is it a scheme problem? Is it a one-on-one problem? Is it a unit problem? Those kind of things, I think. And obviously, as the Giants and the number of sacks that we've had over the last 3 years, it's kind of we've all become line experts as Giants fans.
And you've had to have become, haven't you? Let's start with the flashy receivers. We'll move on to the trenches, because last season you got your flashy receiver in Malik Neighbours, not a player who single-handedly can carry a team. No one player can carry a team, but you must be so excited for what you've seen in that rookie season with Neighbours and for what the future will hold with him and the Giants.
Yeah, I think we think they've instantly got a top 10 receiver in the NFL. I think PFF just had him at 12, and we'd probably argue with that a little bit. But yeah, top 10 receiver. I think he had 170 odd targets last year, which probably we don't want him to have 170 targets. Like, a few less would be better, but more yardage and more downfield. But yeah, at times, yeah, he was the offense. They knew that's where we were going. Couldn't stop him. And yeah, the future's bright.
Yeah, 170 targets, spot on, 109 catches for 1,204 yards, 7 touchdowns as well. So, that was the sixth overall pick last year. Really exciting pick. This year, the first round of the draft, we'll get to the other later picks as well. But the first round, at the third overall pick this year, the Giants drafted Abdul Carter, who on this podcast, I've said myself, I think is the best player in this draft class. Not necessarily a positional need, though, for the Giants, was it? The pass rush last year with the likes of Brian Birds was one of the few elements, I guess, not to, hammer down on last season, but it was one of the aspects of the game which wasn't too bad for the Giants. So what's your take on the pick? How excited are you by Carter? And is that the way you thought they'd go when he fell to you?
Yeah, I think obviously at the start of the process, it was sort of, oh, there's two QBs, a defensive end slash linebacker in Carter, and then Travis Hunter, the unique wide receiver DB project. So we kind of knew that at picking at 3, at least one of those players was going to be available. So a lot of the analysis centered around those. I think initially Carter was like 1, and there was no chance. Then it kind of was clear that Cam Ward was going 1, and for up until the final week, I think it was Travis Hunter was always going to be the guy that was going to fall to us. So I was quite excited with that prospect. I mean, again, wide receiver, obviously having an early round wide receiver, didn't necessarily need a guy at that position. And then the DB kind of side, I was never sold on Shador Sanders. Obviously, I didn't know any of the back off the field stuff that's caused him to drop, but I just felt 3 overall was too high for the talent level at quarterback. I think he will have a decent career in the league. I just didn't think with the talent that was on the board at 3. Shane from the podcast is a big Penn State fan, and he wanted Carter from day one. So from then, the idea of having Carter come and play at the Giants. Obviously, we know the comparisons to our Cowboys friend and the famous Penn State number 11. And those kind of comparisons, and we know how devastating it can be. So, and then going back a bit further in Giants history, we all know that when we had OC, Michael Strahan and Justin Tuck as a threesome thing, and kind of, well, why are we taking this guy early on? And we took after Strahan retired, we took JPP at the end of the first round as well. So having 3 pass rushers, that NASCAR front that we kind of made famous. Bringing an extra pass rusher. Now, I don't think there's any concerns of how you get the guy on the field, especially a guy that's shown flexibility at linebacker. So, do you line him up as a linebacker in kind of is he going to blitz? Is he going to drop? Is he going to and kind of create more problems for the offensive line and the quarterback on the other team to identify who are the 4 rushers coming on this play, because we know Shane Bowen only likes to set 4. So
The quarterbacks, because of this pass rush, whoever's playing the Giants are going to have concerns, but I guess the concern is the flip side of who's playing quarterback for you. The quarterback room, as things stand, is an interesting read in Russell Wilson, James Winston, Jackson Dart, and then Tommy DeVito. Jackson Dart, of course, you traded back up to the first round to go and get. I don't think he starts this year. Do you? This is a Russell Wilson season unless he gets injured or it goes horrifically wrong.
yeah, so we did our big QB analysis pod last week. So and I think we're kind of all in the consensus that depends how the season goes. So we're not paying Russell Wilson starter money. I think he's on 10 million plus incentives that can take it up a bit higher. So if the season doesn't go well, I think we've got quite a late bye week, week 11, week 12, week 13, or something like that. So there's always an opportunity that, hey, if the season's over, we can bring him in. But I think that was exactly why again, it's a whole new QB room. The only Tommy DeVito is still there. I think he's probably just a camp arm and an injury insurance that if someone does go down, that third QB is still someone that we trust. But we've got Russell Wilson is the starter. That's been said that he's going to start OTAs today. He was getting the first team reps, as it were. He was the first one in the rep rotation. We've brought in James Winston to be his backup and to be the backup. So he was taking the second reps in the thing. And if Russell Wilson has a groin injury preseason like last year and can't start week 1, I would expect Jameis Winston to be starting week 1 and we'll have all that fun. I think Malik Neighbours would love to be fed the ball. We might throw 3 interceptions, but we might throw 300 yards to Neighbours in the first game of the season.
Yeah,
Jackson Dart, I think he's got the ideal situation where he's got 2 guys that everything that's coming out of camp, in vets kind of OTAs and all that kind of stuff, is that the leadership that we're seeing from Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston in the locker room. And we saw some of Jameis Winston in the kind of in-season Hard Knocks, how he was like in the locker room as well. So to have that influence in the locker room, and then you don't even have to run um, backup reps in practice each week. You don't have to learn a defense every week to be ready to start as Jackson Dart. He can learn about, you know, improving his game all season. And if at the back end of the season we get to think we can start giving him first team reps and bringing him through and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think they've set the room up to be right. You're gonna have a red shirt year, as it were. As in, having said that, the kind of same plan was with Eli Manning back in the day, was for him to be a red shirt year. We weren't even doing that badly that season, and he was just too good in the practice and everything else that it was, well, we can't keep starting Kurt Warner. In you go, Eli. And it wasn't. And by the end of the season, he got his first win, and he didn't look back from there. So things can change when depending on the situation. But yeah, ideally we pick up enough wins that we're in playoff contention, that we don't, and Jackson Dart can sit and watch, and maybe comes in week 18 when we've already got our home field advantage locked down in the for the playoffs, right?
Well, yeah, it's a funny old game, isn't it? Football. I would not like to say categorically that won't happen. Although in the division you're in, it's probably quite tough. It was 3-14, of course, last season. I won't ask you quite yet where you think you can get to this season, but have a little think for later on. Just on the other picks in the draft before we move on from it, it was Darius Alexander, another defensive lineman in the third round, and then quite much talked about I always say Scam Cataboo. Sam, oh, like I just this name is going to haunt me on the podcast. Cam Skataboo from Arizona State, the running back. He's, I think, a player that you mentioned fantasy football at the top. A lot of people think is a bit of a sleeper in fantasy who could potentially take the job from Tyrone Tracy in this season. Although Tracy had a very good rookie year last year.
Yeah, so Cam Scarborough, I think I'm already building a reputation where I'm in love with an NFL player that has never played a down, and it's Cam Scarborough, and and I think the fit for him and Tyrone Tracy as a double act. I think either of them could be the number one and number two. We saw from kind of the way they mesh together, you kind of get a really good NFL back. So Tyrone Tracy, his yards per carry are quite high, but his missed tackles forced or his inside running, stacked boxes, not great. Cam Scatterby, what you see on tape, he kind of lives this Giants ethos of smart, tough, and defendable. He only Ashton Genty had more broken tackles in college last year than him, and they were a combination of missed tackles forced and broken tackles. So he's not just trucking people; he is, you know, has a bit of shiftiness, short area speed. The knock on him is his long speed, right? So you're not going to see him do what Snake One Barkley was famous for last season in breaking those 80 yards runs. What you'll see if Cam Scatterby gets those kind of holes that the Eagles offensive line were giving Barkley, is you'll see him chase down before the end of the run. But how many opportunities is that a season? 3 or 4 touchdowns? Maybe, but do you still score on those drives anyway? Yeah, and what we saw him do in the Peach Bowl against Texas, I don't think anyone can be not excited. Throwing a touchdown, being the kind of Peach Bowl MVP, nearly beating Texas as Arizona State in the playoffs, and double overtime didn't quite pull it off, but. Yeah, for a 4th round pick, Tracy being a 5th round pick, kind of everyone thinks the Eagles won the whole Barkley deal, and with a Super Bowl ring and everything else, it's hard to challenge him. But we're now got 2 running backs from the 4th and 5th round, showing you why you don't pay a running back £15 million in the league.
Just quickly on the head coaching, Brian Dable, of course, is still in charge. I don't know what your take on it is, but I think a lot of people thought he might have gone at the end of last season. He's certainly still, the seat is very hot still.
Yeah, I think it's tricky though, right? You've got a guy that was coach of the year in his first season. We've turned over coaches every 2 years since Tom Coughlin left. It hasn't worked turning over coaches. Um, it, you always see that if you change the head coach, but you think it's the GM that's the problem. Like if you put a new head coach in this year, the GM goes next year. Does the GM want a new head coach again and all that kind of turnover? So I think the decision was, do you stick with Joe Shane or not? And if you stick with Joe Shane, you may as well stay with Brian Dable, because the relationship between Brian Dable and Joe Shane is really, really good. Obviously, the Buffalo connection and all that kind of stuff that came in through. So I think that's I think that made sense if that was your decision. Whether keeping Joe Shane and everything else was the right decision, time will tell. I think the giving them the ability to go and draft a quarterback in the first round, and especially a guy that might sit for a year, I think you almost go, well, unless we see something in practice that Jackson Dart is definitely not the guy, in the same way kind of Josh Rosen and the Cardinals happened before they came back and brought Kyler Murray in. I think you've got to stick, whatever the record is this year, I think you've got to stick with the crew for one more year and let Jackson Dart start and see what happens, and then reset it if it all goes wrong. I think if you reset it even after this season, even if it is a 3-14 again, I think unless something, again, all of these situations are dynamic, so we've got to see some sort of progress on the pitch. If we're going 3-14, I would expect we see Jackson Dart before the end of the season, and those last 4 games of the season, if we see Jackson Dart has got something about him in the same way, Bryce Young showed something at the end of last season with Carolina, then I think you give him another year and say, right, the seat is as hot as it can be now. Either go for it, or then you pull the plug. It's a full rebuild at that point again.
You haven't won the division, of course, since 2011, when you went on to win Super Bowl 46, I believe was the right number for that one, against the Patriots. What's the ceiling for the Giants this year, do you believe? Do you think we're going to talk Cowboys up next? Do you think the Cowboys are a team that you can finish above this season, or would you be not happy with a 3-14 season, but give these guys another really early first round pick next year if you're going to give them 2 years, and then see what they can do in 2026?
Yeah, I think the kind of upside, the top expectation for the season would be playing meaningful football in December. And I said, if we're in the hunt in December, I think that's progress from where we were. Can we be the second best team in the NFC East? It's a very tough division. One of the reasons why we have such a hard schedule, right, is we've got to play the Cowboys, the Commanders, and the Eagles twice each. So 6 of our games are against teams that beat a lot of the NFC teams, right? So, and we probably, any of those teams probably win the NFC South, right? So that's where we have to make progress. But we lost both games to Washington by a point. One of the games we didn't even concede a touchdown. They kicked 5 field goals, 6 field goals, whatever it was, and beat us, right? So they were always close games. We got to go from a team that was struggling to make 21 points a game, and if they can take that to 28 points a game with the upgrades that we've had on defense, a lot of those one-score games become wins. And so that the upside of it is a 10-win, 11-win season in a very hard schedule. The start is incredibly difficult. We've got 2 road games against divisional opponents in the Commanders and the Cowboys, and then we get our first home game on Monday Night Football hosting the Chiefs. So what a great, difficult start to the season that is. And then we get a nice, easy game against the Chargers. We're going to know where we sit in our division by the time we go on our bye week. And that's why I say that's when you kind of, right, Jackson Dart, come and start the last 4 games if we're out of contention. If we're in contention, then I think at that point we'll know.
As I said right at the start, we do not have a Giants writer as things stand at the HuddleUK website. So if you're listening to this, if you're a follower of the Big Blue podcast, where of course Aaron is part of, if you want to get involved with HuddleUK and join us as one of our writers, we'd love to have you on board. If you drop us an email, it's admin@huddleuk.com. Let us know. We'd be great to hear you. Aaron, thank you very much for joining us. Big Blue over on Twitter, or sorry, X, I'll forever call it Twitter, but it's at Big Blue UK and then IRL for Ireland. It's a great show. Please go follow Aaron and the rest of the gang over there. Aaron, thank you very much again for joining us. And we're going to move on to the team that was third last season in the NFC East, and that is the Dallas Cowboys. Well, up next, we're going to talk Dallas Cowboys, and we've got the Huddle UK's Dallas writer, Paul Redman, with us. And Paul, of course, has got his own podcast. Make sure you go follow over a Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. I've been a pleasure to be on that show as well. Paul, I think this is your first time on the Huddle UK podcast, though.
Yeah, it is. Thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, first time on Huddle UK. Really enjoyed the episode so far. You're doing a great job. Some great interviews and great to hear from the other writers as well that you've had kind of as part of this series so far. So yeah, appreciate you having me on.
I've been really looking forward to doing this division as well. As I was just, saying right at the top, it's a really competitive division. I think the Giants, as we've just mentioned the Giants, we've already covered those, might take a step forward. But the other three teams, particularly now with Washington's resurgence under James Daniels, really interesting. Let's just quickly talk last season for Dallas. Not the best season, more injuries for Dak. Ended up firing head coach at the end. What was your assessment of the campaign?
Yeah, it was rough, and it was one you could see kind of coming. I think a lot of Dallas Cowboys fans, and I certainly had real low expectations going into 2024, just because they hadn't really solved any of the problems that came to the forefront at the end of the 2023 season, which ended in that rather embarrassing home playoff loss to the Packers. A real inability to stop the run and run the ball effectively were huge question marks at the end of that season. And they were still the same question marks going into 2024, and they hadn't really done anything to address those or anything substantial to address those problems. And if you can't run the ball and stop the run in the NFL, it's going to be tough. Really is going to be tough for you to win games, and that's what the Cowboys found. On top of then kind of defensive injuries that just ravaged the defense all throughout the season, and kind of topped it off when Dak went down partway through the season. It was season done from there.
Now you've tried to address this, of course. Brian Schottenheimer's the new head coach. I know in your story that you wrote for our website, you were enamored with that decision.
Yeah, I think the whole process that the Cowboys went through to part ways with Mike McCarthy and end up hiring Brian Schottenheimer doesn't fill you with confidence that Brian Schottenheimer is going to be a guy to be able to push the Cowboys forward. And ultimately, at this point now, with it being so long since the Cowboys have even got to a conference championship game, then they're the NFC team now that has had the longest drought since being in the NFC championship game. It doesn't inspire that somebody who's been a coach and an assistant in various roles for 25 years, never really kind of getting close to getting a job as a head coach, all of a sudden just gets hired from within after the Cowboys don't even try and speak to the premier coaching candidates that were available in this cycle. So the whole process doesn't fill you with confidence. I might be being harsh on Brian Schottenheimer. Of course, he comes from his lineage. He's great. Marty Schottenheimer, his father, was a fantastic and a legendary NFL head coach. But yeah, I think definitely the jury's out. But Brian is saying the right things so far, and I think that's all he can do at the minute. Is he's preaching culture, 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 which is definitely something that needs to change in Dallas, given how the Cowboys are run. And he's saying the right things, and some of the actions so far indicate that actually there might be a bit more hope for Brian Schottenheimer. But that we'll only see come September, right?
Your piece I've just seen here, the headline was point in Schottenheimer continues Dallas's descent into irrelevancy, which, maybe a bit harsh. We'll have to see, what comes in this season. You did also have, I was speaking to a friend of mine, my favorite headline of May, without doubt, which is after the George Pickens trade, which was it a bargain or slim pickings? Very
Yeah.
good. There was a few comments on the Facebook post as well of that. So a round of applause for that. Very nice indeed. What did you make of that trade? We'll get onto the draft in a moment. Obviously, this came after that.
Yeah.
Um, I think Pickens and Lamb, you could argue, sort of definitely a top 10 wide receiver 1-2 combination now. The fear is just always the on-field mental behavior side of things, because there's no denying his talent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the risk. I'm less concerned about that as maybe others are. My main concern would be that if Mike Tomlin's given up on him, Is there something more, and is there something more that we haven't seen that may come out in Dallas, where maybe there isn't quite as strong leadership? Like I say, Mike Tomlin, how experienced he is, how many of these kind of diva wide receivers, which might be an unfair tag, but we've seen Mike Tomlin deal with Antonio Brown and Claypool and Juju and others, and he always just seems to find the know the right time when to get rid of them. And I hope in this case with George Pickens, he's not got this one right. But as a number 2 wide receiver, as he would be in Dallas, I think things will be a lot different as kind of the main receiving threat in Pittsburgh. He naturally got a lot more attention given to him on the defense and a lot more double coverage. He's not going to see anywhere near as much of that in Dallas because the teams playing the Cowboys are going to have to factor in. You've got CeeDee Lamb and you have to give him so much attention and double him a lot. There's potentially the 3rd and 4th options. And there's also Jake Ferguson, who should be due a bounce back year as well. So I think Pickens is going to find a lot of one-on-one coverage, and Dak's great at kind of throwing those contested balls and those deep passes. And that's where I think Pickens can thrive.
I got a lot of stick taken out of me. One of our friends always goes back over our sort of fantasy drafts and, like, at the end of the season, find some stats, find some funnies, and then basically laughs at the worst picks. And I think so. I'm kind of thinking what the year was, probably 2023 or 2022 season. With the final pick, I took Jalen Tolbert, who I think had 1 catch in the entire season. And I got ridiculed in the group chats on WhatsApp and on Facebook, just going, "What were you doing?" He was rubbish. And now, because I got ridiculed so much, I'm so team Jalen Tolbert. I want him to do well, just to vindicate a pick from 3 years ago, which sounds so silly. But he had a bit of a better year last year. The wide receiver 3 probably type guy. Guys remind me of how Josh Palmer was behind your Keenan Allen and Mike Williams at the Chargers. But he did a job, didn't he?
Yeah,
Defend me here.
Jalen Tolbert certainly did have a much better year last year, and I think there was a bit of a expectation when he came out of South Alabama that he'd have kind of a bit more of a, not necessarily instant impact, but a bigger impact, and it's just that's just been delayed a little bit. But he's got the opportunity in 2025 to really cement himself as that 3rd option in the Cowboys, Cowboys wide receiving charts, I should say, and again, with that attention that Lamb's going to get, this is where the others can pick up and really, really be productive. And Dak won't be one where Dak Prescott isn't one where necessarily just keep force feed CeeDee Lamb. If it's not there, he will use the other options, and there'll be plenty of opportunity for Pickens, for Tolbert, for Turpin, and as mentioned, for Ferguson to be productive in 2025.
Moving on to the draft then, 12th pick overall, the Cowboys selected Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama. That's now 60% of the offensive line called Tyler. We're almost at the 5-for-5. We've got Tyler Guyton, Tyler Smith, and Tyler Booker there. I mean, Terrence is the other one. If only you had a center that started with a T in the first name, it would be absolutely perfect. What was your take on the pick? And obviously the draft as a whole, just rattle off a few of the names. It was a defensive edge, whose name I'm not going to attempt, but Donovan's the first name in the 2nd round. Jaden Blue was the running back a bit later on. I'll touch on the running backs in a minute. But yeah, what was your assessment overall of the Cowboys draft?
Yeah, I think my initial reaction to Tyler Booker was that at 12 it was a bit of a reach, but I think the pick itself was one to kind of fit in with what Brian Schottenheimer particularly has been preaching, that culture piece, because Booker, while he's played on the field, played to a pretty high standard, arguably the best interior offensive lineman in the draft. At 12, it's a bit of a reach regard, but it's more his off the field leadership, not necessarily his play that's been touted. Speaking glowing references of him coming out of Alabama as being a true leader, almost like Will Anderson on the opposite side, how he was defensively and how the people at Alabama spoke so highly of him. And that's transitioned to the NFL pretty well. So hopefully Tyler Booker is the same. It is a problem that the Cowboys had. Zach Martin sadly had to retire after an incredible NFL career. And Tyler Booker could nail down that right guard spot for 10, 12 years. And if that's the case, then it's a great pick. I was, if they were going to pick it interior at that interior O-line, I was really hoping it was going to be Gray Zabel. He went about 6 or 7 picks later to Seattle just because of the versatility that he offers. But I think I don't think they can go wrong with Tyler Booker. They need some more stability on the O-line. It was a problem last year with Martin's injury and age, and they were just inconsistent play on the O-line. And hopefully the Cowboys are getting back to kind of having that real just first round talent across the whole of the O-line, or the vast majority of it, and it becoming a real strength again.
Yeah, well, all 3 Tylers are first-round picks as well, which is just a weird statistic. The best statistic about Tyler Booker, I've just got it up here because I'm just trying to remember it, was he only gave up 1 sack in 970 pass blocking attempts in college over 3 years, and those sort of numbers you love to see. So, yeah, a safe pick, I would agree. It's not flashy, it doesn't grab the headlines, but a needed element to this Dallas offense, which is a nice segue onto the running game, because I think that's where, well, your face, as I said, running game, and my sort of smirk kind of say it all. Whilst Lamb and Pickens could be a top 10 sort of wide receiver duo, a running back room of Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and then rookies Jaden Blue, Phil Maffer, has to be in the 10 worst, you'd say.
Yeah, I think it's probably in the kind of the lower quartile of the NFL running back rooms. I think it is a problem. They again, we just in the intro, I suppose, talking about there, it was a problem going into last year. They addressed it with Ezekiel Elliott. That was a disaster. They found something in Rico Dowdle in the second half of the year, and as the offensive line got better and played better the second half of the year, Rico Dowdle became a huge part of the offense, and he sadly was let go in free agency because I think he got $6 million from the Panthers, which I think is pretty good value given his production last year. The Cowboys didn't want to pay it. They went for a cheap option in Javonte Williams. Miles Sanders came in as well. So he had a great year with the Eagles, but then stunk out the place in Carolina. So yeah, it's going to be another problem. The rookies, I think Jaden Blue, they're hoping Jaden Blue can kind of be a Tony Pollard-esque player, in terms of kind of get him in space and he can kind of hopefully hit the home run, so to speak. But yeah, it's going to be a problem again. I think the O-line play should be better, so that may help. But yeah, I think they need one of these 2 rookie running backs to really step up, because the veterans they've got in don't particularly inspire any confidence.
I like Javonte Williams. We've seen the explosive plays when he was a rookie. It's just the injuries have mounted up so much. You wonder if he can ever get back it. And whenever I see Phil Maffer as well, as Phil Marsh, Phil, and then 5 letters, it's only 2 letters away from my name. And every time it comes up on Sleeper, I do have to have a double take. I didn't realize I was in the NFL. Although I'm sure that Phil Maffer would do a far better job than me at 6'4" and in my 30s at running back. So good luck to him. I do wish him luck. It was a 7-10 finish last season for the Cowboys. What's the floor? What's the ceiling for your hopes and dreams for 2025?
Yeah, it could be with kind of this first-time head coach, the Pickens factor, the expectation that's in Dallas. I think they're on 8. I think the Cowboys have got 8 kind of island games / primetime games this season, which is incredible. For a 7-10 team the year before, this could blow up, and this could be 4 or 5 wins. If it went, kind of disastrously wrong. The schedule's pretty tough, kind of the last third of the season, from kind of the Chiefs at Thanksgiving onwards. It's a pretty brutal run. I think the ceiling is back in the playoffs, double-digit wins. I think 10-11 wins. I'm back in the playoffs, and if things click, I think I've got the Cowboys at 8 and 9, so kind of only 1 win better than last year. I think just that end of the season schedule is really tough, and I think they might go on a bit of a run there where they might only kind of win 1 of the last 5, 1 of the last 6 games.
I've just got it up. It really is horrible. From the 23rd of November, just in order: the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Lions, the Vikings, the Chargers, the Commanders. Wow. I mean, then it finishes with the Giants, which you would like to hope will be one that the Cowboys are targeting. But that 6-game stretch in a row before that, you would imagine all 6 of those teams are going to finish with winning records
Yeah,
in
I think it's
2025.
the first time in NFL history a team has had to play 6 consecutive games against 11+ win teams from the season before, which is just a run there. So they're going to have to start off well, really well. And I've played it through a couple of times, just playing through game by game. I think they could be in a good position getting into that Thanksgiving game against the Chiefs. They could have 6-7 wins. 7-4 wouldn't necessarily be a bad place to be at that point, but they're going to have to find a way to win then 2 or 3 of those games down the stretch. And that's where I think the issues in the running game, and again, they didn't really address the middle interior of the defensive line in free agency or in the draft. Osa Odighizuwa is staying, which is great, but apart from that, don't really have anything in the middle of the defensive line, and that's where teams really hurt Dallas.
And much like the Giants, you obviously have the unfortunate location, I guess, of being in a division with the reigning Super Bowl champions. And I don't know if they would be called the most exciting upcoming team, but definitely in that conversation in the Washington Commanders, it's going to be tough for you to finish above either of those sides in 2025.
Yeah, I think so for sure. The Eagles are just so strong, and they're only seeming to get better as well. The Philadelphia Eagles. I suppose the one thing to hold on hope for in the NFC East is nobody's won it back to back for 20 years now. So since the Eagles did it at the start of the 2000s, nobody's won the NFC East 2 years in a row. So that probably sparks more hope for Commanders fans than it does Cowboys fans this time around. But, it is going to be a real tough division. I'm expecting the Commanders to be good. Jaden Daniels is obviously a phenomenal rookie season, but they've got better as well, filling out their depth. And the Giants, who've struggled for a long time, look like they're set to kind of make some forward progress as well. So, yeah, this could be the year the Cowboys finish bottom of the NFC East. But, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to win, certainly.
Yeah, well, best of luck to Dallas and yourself. I hope it's an enjoyable season. As I said right at the top, 2024 was a bit of a slog at times. So I hope this one is more enjoyable for you. As I said at the start of this chat with Paul, make sure to go follow his own podcast, Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover, and you can read all of his stuff for the Huddle UK as well over at our website. That's it, enough Cowboys talk. Let's move on to the exciting team, as I just said, the Washington Commanders. Well, with the greatest respect to the Giants and the Cowboys, now we get into the real meat and bones of things. There's 2 teams, according to our poll on Twitter, who joint favourites to win the division. We're going to start with the team that finished second, of course, continuing our reverse order, and that's the Washington Commanders, one of the most exciting teams to be a fan of at the moment in the NFL. Joining us, of course, is the Washington writer for HuddleUK, Chris. Chris, how are you doing?
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Early morning for you as well. We always have this time difference from where you are over in Oz. I know you're still planning to move back to this side of the world at some point.
2 months. 2 months. It's getting exciting.
Too much. Well, at that point, we can schedule things that aren't at ridiculous times in the morning and night for the 2 of us. I want to talk off-season, the draft as well. I believe you were one of the writers, if I'm not mistaken, who got their draft prediction for the first round spot on.
I did. I cheated. I did some research, so.
Well, I mean, I assume that you're happy. That was your pick was Josh Connolly Jr.
Yeah, that's right.
First round, which they took 29th overall. What was your take on that and the draft as a whole?
It was good. I mean, we had lost some of our picks to trades, so it was always going to be a slightly tough draft from that point of view. And I've spent years saying we need to draft line. And now I'm whinging about it, kind of thing. So let's just go figure. That's contrary bugger. But yeah, I think I saw the grading, our day one picks, considering we only had I think it was the first and a third. We did remarkably well. We picked up really well. So Connolly, the love's really high for him. And getting a wide receiver was unexpected. But I think. It's all. I think in fact it was Amos, wasn't it? Was the next one, the cornerback. Slightly unexpected. I think both were kind of unexpected because we just traded to get a lineman, a tackle, and then we drafted a tackle, and you sort of go, didn't we just solve that problem? But as usual, everyone loves our general manager Peters and thinks he's a genius, and so we all kind of, regardless of what we think, we always go, he must be the wisest man on earth. He knows what he's doing. And I think when you look at Amos, for example, everyone went, he should have gone higher. There was a lot of that sort of feedback on the draft. And usually the Washington drafts are the opposite of that. It's all about missed opportunities and daft moves. I think the feeling was, some really good stuff. So yeah, very confident about it. which is a weird thing to say as a Washington fan.
Well, with Jaden Daniels, there's so much reason to be optimistic, and
Yeah.
the drafting of Connolly is continuing this role and this objective of protecting him. They the centre last year, wasn't it, Tyler Biadish? Then the
Yep.
trade which you just alluded to as well with Laramie Tunsil, which
That's right.
I've got it up here. What did they give away? A third, a seventh, and then a second and a fourth next year. So they really went
It's brutal,
heavy.
brutal. Yeah,
It's a big trade, and then with
big
Connolly,
trade.
because Tunsil, several-time Pro Bowler.
Yes, five-time.
Five-time Pro Bowler. There we are. You knew straight away more than myself. Connolly will probably then start. Do you think he goes straight in?
I sort of hope so, assume so, because he's a first-round pick. You want to see them. It's a bit like the idea that we would have put Daniels to one side and let him wait or something, and then you'd have missed the entirety of last year. So, one of my notes is that the trades we made was a 30-year-old, a 29-year-old, and a 29-year-old, and we got Bobby Wagner as well. We've got a lot of olds talent. And I can see that they're respected and they can mentor and all this sort of stuff and the culture stuff. But my note is this is a win now mentality that they're doing. They're doing everything they can to win this year, as it were. Because the other fact you've always got to think is that when the quarterback ceases his rookie contract, we're going to have to pay him an absolute fortune, and essentially we won't be able to afford any other people on the team. So it's now or never, I think, in so many ways. You can see it in what they're doing. And I think in some of the drafts, Jalen Lane, the wide receiver, that's a bit of that, the running back. So, you could have gone more line and things and been really philosophical long term. But yeah, I feel it's a win now. It's a win now draft. That's what they're doing.
The wide receiver room it's just a random group of names. I mean, there's some, obviously McLaurin is the highlight name in that, has been with the Commanders for years now. But when you look at the other names, Michael Gallup, KJ Osborne, Deebo Samuel, Noah Brown, it just feels like someone's thrown a load of wide receiver names in the air and they've all landed in Washington. But it kind of worked last year as well, didn't it, with the likes of Zacchaeus and Brown?
Yeah. Well, that's the freaky thing. It worked last year without Deebo Samuel, and then you put Deebo Samuel in it, and Jalen Lane, for all I understand, really, which is not much about him because I'm not a big college guy, is he's just quick. You need that speedster to open things up. Deebo Samuel's a guy you just get the ball in his hands and he's going to do stuff. So I think what we achieved last year with essentially only Terry McLaurin is one way it was regarded. Any additions is only going to be a good thing. And we were actually really good, weirdly, last year, despite only Terry McLaurin. So, and then obviously got Zach Ertz. We assume he's staying. It still remains seemingly unclear. But he was really solid for us. So yeah, I think the offense is weirdly stacked. You've got a strong line, star quarterback, and then a lot of talent around him. I mean, I know other teams have better talent, and we're always going to be jealous of that. But I think it's about as good as you can do in the short turnaround they've had.
And with the coaching staff there, again, having seen what you saw last season, and the general manager, which you've already alluded to, the confidence and it's a happy place, isn't it?
It is amazingly good vibe. I mean, it is. I think we went 4-13 the year before the turnaround last year. So the shift is just you've never seen anything like it, kind of thing. And I think my only negative, and this is not a negative in a way, is but like it all goes with Jaden Daniels. If he gets injured, I kind of think the whole show ends, right? And obviously, I know that's the NFL is all about injuries. That is a huge thing, and your quarterback is the key. But I mean, he's just the superstar, and if he's healthy for the year, I'm sort of mentally thinking, so we're going to win the Super Bowl, right? I mean, and as a Washington fan, you don't think that. You're not for the last 30 years. So, and obviously we were one game away last year, and it's hard to say. Brady says this thing, the team's different every year. Every year's a rebuild. And I think that's true. You can't just say we took last year's team and we've added to it. It's more complicated than that. But I think our assumption is with Peters still there. I knew I was Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator. It was a huge deal that we kept him, I think. I think, and he's saying that Jaden Daniels is now, more settled in, looking better, and you think, Jesus, that's scary. Like, he's better? Like, is that even possible? So yeah, the continuity, and then I think the sort of vibe around the team and the sort of confidence and the Dan Quinn. I mean, I can't give any love to an old Cowboys coach, but here we are. That's what he is, and he seems to have been the perfect fit. The transformation in the culture is just amazing. So yeah, super positive. I can't believe I'm saying this.
Continuity is absolutely the right word, isn't it? We're speaking to the Eagles next, but we're going to have to talk about the fact that they've lost Kellen Moore. When you look at some of the other big teams in the NFC, you look at the Lions, who've lost both their offensive and defensive coordinators this offseason. For Washington, it feels like all the key parts of the puzzle are still there.
Yeah.
And as you say, if Jaden Daniels can take another step forward, is he the first rookie to win 2 road playoff games, I think was the statistic, in his rookie season, that is. If he's going to be better, how good is the Super Bowl, do you think, realistic in the realms of possibility for Washington this season?
Well, I think we should do a podcast on my article on the Philadelphia game. I have no hard cheese on it. I've been thinking about it all morning since about 4 a.m. Right, I've been up for about 3 hours thinking about this. I think the Eagles played absolutely brilliant in the Super Bowl. That was the game I would have been more worried about taking on the Chiefs. Weirdly, I mean, I know the Eagles are great, right? But I think we really had them in that game. I think we really had them for the beating, and so. Yeah, I kind of think we should have got to the Super Bowl, and obviously no sort of like hard cheese about it. But whatever you think, we were 1 game away, which was just an insane thing. I mean, Detroit, before the Detroit game, I thought this just, Detroit are too good. We just can't do it. And we just sort of destroyed them. And the Eagles game, despite all the debacle, like there was so many bad things happen, but yet 2 minutes from half time, we were still in the game. It could have gone the other way so easily. I think people misunderstand the final scoreline and say, "Oh, it was a whitewash. It was a thing." I think honestly, I think we gave the Eagles a wake-up call before they played the Chiefs. I really do.
Are you giving yourselves credit for the Eagles winning the Super Bowl? Is that
Well, we have to, really, don't we? No. I mean, I thought I just genuinely, because I have to give some love to them, unfortunately. I thought they played great in the Super Bowl. They really did. I mean, that was really impressive. It wasn't actually that good a game because they played too good. So, but whatever.
Yeah, that was the only disappointment, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And
it was so good.
They were so good, and the Chiefs. I mean, they just closed down the Chiefs beautifully. And the Chiefs. The only good thing for me was as I said before the game, I don't know who I hate more. So but I think I kind of wanted to see the Chiefs lose. It was nice to see someone else win. So I've supported the Eagles sort of weirdly. Yeah.
I remember the first time you were on the podcast and you were talking about the Giants and how dare they give Saquon Barkley to the Eagles, and we spoke to Aaron earlier, the Giants fan, who called him Snakeon Barkley, which really made me laugh.
Yeah,
there is that. There's mutual respect, I guess, within the division as much as that the rivalry.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've written elsewhere. It is the strongest division by Super Bowl wins and playoffs and all this sort of stuff. So, it's the classiest and the best. So we have high standards, and there's no doubt in the town. I think it's also. I've been listening to some of the other podcasts and everyone else's excitement about their divisions. It's great that so many people have hopes. And looking at the Giants, their draft, it looks kind of good. I'm like, it's nice when they're useless because then you get 2 free wins, right? And the Cowboys are just perennially a problem, even when they're just, they choke on all these sort of jokes that we make about them. But they usually have a good team, so there's no sort of guarantees in it. So yeah, it's a good division.
I should probably put a counter somewhere on the screen of how many times during this episode I say that I'm really excited to see this division in 2025 because, as you just said, I think it's going to be one of the best ones in the NFL to watch. The last thing you wrote for the HuddleUK website was taking a look at the Commanders' schedule release because they just came out a couple weeks ago with loads of videos. We've got articles. Sean, our Bengals writer, put together a HuddleUK top 10 schedule release videos, which is a great read over on the website. But you were looking at yours. The Commanders go on bye in week 12. You're hoping, I've been reading this article, that hopefully is the word you use to start the sentence, for an 8-3 record going into that bye week. The key games pre-bye are the Chiefs, the Lions, and then and then you've got the Packers, the Chargers, and the Seahawks that could throw up a stumbling block.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think listening to some of the other podcasts, I think I've underrated the Falcons and possibly the Bears. And it's interesting because the Bears actually pushed us right to the limit. We only got that stupid win because their stupid defender not paying any attention. So I don't suppose they're going to do that again, right? Here's hoping. But yeah, I mean, I looked at that schedule, and it's hard to look at schedules because there's so many ways to look at them, and you think sometimes you just think, well, it's that any team can win any game, right? Which is always true. But sort of looking at it and looking at the ratings and the rankings, I thought, there's a lot of fairly easy games. I think the Chiefs is the one that stood out, and the Lions, partly the Lions because I think they're going to want to kill us. I mean, they really must hate us after last year, so I think it's going to be quite personal.
And most people I get on for these podcasts or breakdowns by teams, I ask them how many wins they think they will get this season. I'm quite fortunate that I already know your answer to that question because you put it in your story of 13-4, which is one win more than last season's 12-5 record. The follow-up question to that is, what do you think the Eagles will be? And do you think 13-5? I can never do the maths anymore.
13-4. I know they keep changing the number. Yes, I know.
Yeah,
the swines.
I can't remember what I'm adding up to. But 13-4. Do you think that will be good enough to win the division in 2025?
Good question. I mean, I think again the easiest thing is you look at the schedule. They keep the Eagles to right at the end, and that's clearly going to be the crunchiest games of everything. I mean, on a superficial level, the Super Bowl champions were the kind of semi-runners-up, right? So that's where it's all going to come to a head. And there's also the other interesting thing with schedules is about how the other teams play in the late part of the season. Because are they now like tanking for draft picks, or are they out, or are they still in? So ask me again after the bye, I think is the answer to that one in a weird way. Will we do better than the Eagles? God, I'm just looking forward to those two games. I mean, in the same way I think the Lions will be out for blood for us, I would be stunned if the Redskins aren't out for blood against the Eagles because they knocked us out of the playoffs. They took away our Super Bowl. But I'd also say that the freaky thing about Jaden Daniels is he's just the calmest guy, and I don't think it's going to bother him. It bothers me, and I want blood, but I doubt he does. Weirdly, and that's what makes him so good. He's just like Mr. Cool, like not phased. Maybe I'm going to be a rookie in the Super Bowl. Who cares? Whatevs. It's just crazy, like how he does it.
And of course, the Commanders have a trip abroad this year.
They do.
Come to Spain, to the Bernabeu in Madrid.
Yes, because don't we always play NFL games in Spain?
Spain. I mean, hopefully, lovely weather there in Spain, and later on in this year, the Commanders Dolphins. That does have the potential to be a real great game for a European audience as well.
It does, and I think going back to ancient history of mine, I think it was one of the first. The Super Bowl. I can't remember which number it was, but it was the one that sort of kicked off the NFL in the UK. It was the Redskins Dolphins Super Bowl, the one with Reagan's famous run and blah blah blah, and the comeback. So I think it was 27-17 to the Redskins. So it's a I thought we were like rivals from all time because I was a little kid and I didn't know anything. So I just thought like Redskins and Dolphins is this huge rivalry, So I've always had the Dolphins as a weird rivalry for the Redskins, even though there really isn't any logical rivalry whatsoever. But yeah, I think as a team to pick, I quite like that one. I think it's a nice one. I'm tempted to try and get down there. I was going to ask you off the record, what's the deal with the press passes, boss?
Well, when we get closer to those games, I'll let everyone know, and hopefully there'll be a lot of excitement in store for everyone involved in the huddle closer to those games later this year. Before I let you go, I'm going to ask Nathan this as well in a minute. The Eagles, Ryan, what would be your message to the Eagles going into this season, looking for revenge?
Nathan, bless him. What would be my message? Okay, come on, Chris. No, I don't think I have one. Good luck, would it be? Being very polite. I think the Eagles have got to know we're breathing down their necks. We breathing down their necks last year. So, I have a lot of respect for their team. Nick Sirianni. He's a weirdish looking guy, but you've got to credit them. And they have this dysfunctionality and all this stuff, but results, right? So whatever they're doing this year, I'm scared about it. Like they're the team to beat. Probably Are they the team to beat more than the Chiefs? I guess they are technically on paper. So yeah.
When you are
Yeah,
the
it's going to
Super
be.
Bowl champions, you are the team to beat.
Yeah, I think you are the team to beat. So I
Everyone
think
knows.
good luck. I'm glad our games are towards the end of the year, though, and I think it's the real thing. That is going to be those games are going to be absolutely amazing. I'm really looking forward to those. So.
Yeah, 20th of December, it's at the Commanders, and then Christmas Day against the Cowboys, and then rounded off the season week 18 against the Eagles once again. And that is a lovely segue. Chris, thank you very much for joining us. You can go read Chris's stuff over at the HuddleUK website, of course. And now it is time for Nathan. The Super Bowl champions, they get to go last. We'll give them the guard of honor into the podcast. We'll round up now with the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, to round off today's episode, the NFC East champions, the NFC champions, and the NFL Super Bowl champions. Of course, we can't forget the Philadelphia Eagles. Nathan, what a year it's been. I know the Eagles, you were celebrating, and then more recently, Sunderland, your soccer/football team. It's been the best year possible for you in a sporting terms.
Oh, see, I'm definitely not going to complain. Like I said, the sun shines on my backside a bit this year, so I've got a lot of celebrating to catch up on, but no, I very much enjoyed myself.
14-3 season last year, and then some tense games and tight games in the playoffs, particularly against Washington, and we've just talked about that as well. Of course, what was your view on the season as a whole? Do you think there were moments where you potentially got a bit lucky, or do you think Saquon Barkley just basically ran you to glory?
I think the look started at the start of the year when the Giants give us Barkley. I feel like that was just a massive slip up on their behalf, and then the rest. I know the first 4 games it felt like we were trying to find our feet. We played the Packers in Brazil. That went really well. I thought that was a good, because Packers, I thought, were going to be up there at the end of the year. So to get that win off the start was tremendous. But then we obviously lost the next game, won the next one. Then we had the blowout of the Buccaneers. But then after that, after we had our bye week, it seemed like we really found our feet. And it just felt like, when you're watching a team and it feels like there's no way they can get beat? It just felt like that until obviously we came up against Washington. Jalen Hurts goes out, and that's when we lose the next game. But I just thought it was really both sides of the ball. I thought defensively, Vic Fangio had us solid, like absolutely tremendous. And then Kellen Moore just slowly brought us forward to the point where we scored that many points in the Super Bowl. It wasn't even a tight contest in the end.
Yeah, I was pleased to, as a Chargers fan, I was pleased to see the Eagles. I was more pleased to see it wasn't the Chiefs, to be perfectly honest. But I was kind of hoping it was a bit of a closer game because, as a kind of neutral in the game, it was so one-sided until late on when the Chiefs put up a little bit of a fight. The off-season, obviously, Kellen Moore's a name you touched upon. He's left, now head coach of the Saints. On the offensive side of the ball, looking at the depth chart, it's pretty much as you were.
Yeah.
There's a couple of changes on the offensive line. Defensive, where there's been a bit more change. But what have you made of the off-season moves? Do you think, how important do you think, or how big a loss do you think Kellen Moore will be to the team? Because Jalen Hurts seems to have a different offensive coordinator every year in the NFL. No team has won the division in back-to-back years for some 20-odd years. So do you think you can go and do it again?
I think it's just, if I'm honest, I think we will. I think it's good, but I think it's going to be very tight because our first couple of games, obviously, to start off with the Cowboys coming to us, I feel like that's very much going to be a Dallas revenge tour. They're going to come with something to prove, and then after that, we've got Kansas City, who again come back with something to prove. So it's a pretty hard slate of games. When we refer back to the offensive side of the ball, I'm not too worried on that side of the ball because you feel like Batulo, who's coming in, don't feel like he's got to change too much. I think as long as he's got his options there with AJ Brown, he's got obviously Barkley there, and Dallas Goedert still a tight end. It feels very much like he's got 3, or even Smith, wide receiver. You've got 4 very strong options. So we can just carry on playing the way Kellen Moore ran it. I'm more concerned defensively. So I understand what they've done there. They've freed up a lot of money because there's a lot of our players are going to be coming at the end of the rookie contracts and people are going to want paying. So they're extending that championship window, which I totally understand it. But when you see names like obviously Brandon Graham's retired, you see Gardner Johnson, which I think's the biggest loss out of all of them. I feel like he brought a bit of an attitude to the, especially with the rookies on that side. We've lost Williams. Darius Slayer's gone, who took a lot of stick at the start of the year, especially when he went on the Cowboys podcast. I think he took a lot of stick then, but It's just the 4 veteran presences who like you kind of need if you want to retain a championship. So it's going to be interesting on that side of the ball. But I think Fangio was obviously, I think he's going to have known up front that these changes are going to be made. So I'm hoping he can keep it nice and like sturdy back there. But I think it's going to be a really rough year actually, especially at the start of the year.
Yeah, the schedule, as you touched on the first two against the Cowboys and then the Chiefs, but it doesn't get any easier after that. The Rams will be a tough team. Then it's at Tampa, and then it's against my Super Bowl outside pick, which is the Denver Broncos. I think a bit more like the opposite of the Eagles. Defensively, it's going to be impossible to score points on them. So I think that'll be a really interesting matchup, offensively, defense in that Broncos Eagles game. The offense, though, as you said, it is so good, isn't it? It's so scary. Barkley, Hurts, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. Just as before, that's ignoring Dallas Goedert and how good the offensive line has been.
Yeah, it just feels like what we're seeing in the Super Bowl a bit. Barkley was quiet because I think Kansas City played him brilliantly. I don't think they could have done much better. But then you obviously have Jalen Hurts running off for a touchdown one way, or you've got Smith. They even got Dotson involved. Like it was brilliant. They just managed to find a way to get them involved. But I think my only problem with this is obviously they're going to stick heavy with Barkley. I feel like this is going to be the last year where we've got 2 elite wide receivers. I really do feel like if they're going to stick heavy with Barkley, we're going to have to make the most of this year because I feel like one of them wide receivers, maybe more Smith, is going to maybe want to go away and be a wide receiver 1 somewhere and be the main guy. So I think this is where we'll have to really, really take advantage of it.
The benefits on the defensive side of the ball came from the draft for the second year in a row now. It baffles me how the Eagles, for 2 straight years, have had one of the best defensive players in 2 consecutive rounds drop into their lap after Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell last year. Jihad Campbell at 31. And then even Andrew, and I think it's Makuba is how you say it, the safety from Texas, seems to be maybe not necessarily plug and play replacing Gardner Johnson, but a really quality safety coming in. And then Campbell, who most people think is in the top couple linebackers in the entire draft class, to go alongside Zach Bound and Nakobe Dean. This isn't exactly a bad defense, even though there has been a few holes to fill.
Well, that's kind of it, especially with Vic Fangio still in charge. When you've got rookies coming in, and then you've always got the experience of a championship-winning coach, and especially, I just don't understand how Campbell fell. I think the whole draft was a bit weird because obviously I was watching and you're seeing certain names just kept falling and falling and falling. I was like, oh, hold on, we're gonna. At one point, I thought we were gonna end up with Sanders as well. I really thought that was the way. It seems like a very much an Eagles pick. But defensively, I'm really happy because linebackers somewhere where we shouldn't be overly concerned, but like an injury or two, and then it starts to become a bit of a problem. So I think we've drafted so well again. And then I don't know if you've seen, we've just got rid of Bryce Huff and got more picks for next year. So it's like we've got a nice little prep going and we're thinking ahead. So it'll be interesting to see how the next couple of years go in general.
You've just beat me to the point because I popped up on a sleeper notification just before we started recording that Bryce Huff, the defensive edge for the Eagles, are being traded to the 49ers for some draft picks. He only signed a 3-year contract last year, but as you say, it just the Eagles seem like such a well-run organization at the moment, don't they? From general manager all the way down.
I think, yeah, that's 100%. And it feels like, for me, what's important is you can have a great general manager, you can have a great coach, you can have great coordinators, but everyone's got to kind of be in line and have the same vision. And it just feels like we're in that direction. It feels like Roseman's got everyone set and they know exactly where we're heading, where we want to be. And it's obviously like if you came off the back of a Super Bowl and you just see that championship window extending a bit more because our team is so young now. As it just feels like we've got a good chance for the next 5 years to be competing. I just think this year might be a bit of a. I'm still optimistic. I don't think we're not going to have a good year. I just think retaining that Super Bowl is going to be like a really tough ask.
I'm really intrigued to see. We put up a poll this week on HuddleUK's X account to see what people or who people thought would win this division in 2025. And it's just ended in a dead heat between the Eagles and the Commanders. Significantly less votes for the Cowboys and, of course, the Giants, unsurprisingly. Are you worried about the threat that Jaden Daniels and the Commanders will pose you this season?
A bit more than I thought I would be. The way I look at it is, we're seeing it with CJ Stroud last year. I feel like that second year is, especially when you're a quarterback, I feel like it's very, very big on development, especially because I feel like, especially when you're seeing with Stroud, the kind of supplied him with such good receivers, it becomes a bit of like a pressure position. But Jaden Daniels, he's a few years older. I think he's got a bit of a mature head on his shoulders. I'm just interested to see, more than anything, interested to see how he gets on.
And what about the other two? The Cowboys and the Giants obviously would be much higher odds to win the division. It would be a proper shock if either of those two teams. But Schottenheimer now in charge of the Cowboys. The Giants, it feels like last chance saloon for Brian Daboll and Abdul Carter. Let's see if he can cause any issues. I mean, the one thing the Giants have, which we said earlier in this episode, is a really good pass rush. So Jalen Hurts is going to have his work cut out avoiding that Giants defense now.
Yeah, I think with the Cowboys, I kind of don't know what happened to them last year. It just fell off a cliff. Like, it's great to watch. Don't get us wrong, I absolutely loved it. But it was just, you were watching them. I was like, well, I think they'll catch up next week. And then it gets to that point of the season where you're like, this is going to go very downhill for them. So I'm just interested to see how they'll get on, because obviously they've still got Dak Prescott. I know he takes a lot of stick, especially in the postseason, but he's still a good quarterback. So I want to see how they get on. The Giants. I think the Giants are the Giants. I really do think they're going to linger at the bottom of the division this year, but I think they've drafted really well. I think out of the two teams, it's the Patriots and the Giants who have drafted really well. So I think give them a few years and they'll be up there, but I can't see them competing at a high level this year. But like you said, defensively, it'll be especially if Jalen Hurts wants to sit in the pocket a bit longer, it might be a very interesting time for him.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how far they come on. As we said right at the start, it was 14-3 for the Eagles last season. They won the division by 2 games. Washington finished 12-5. To win the division, how many games do you think they'll need to win this year?
I think it's going to be after about 14 again. Because what did I think Commanders had 12 last year. I think they're going to be there and thereabouts again. I've not seen their fixtures actually, but I think they'll be there and thereabouts again. I think it's going to have to be 14. I think we'll have to be near perfect. I think it's just I know you've always got the Lions and the Vikings in their division that makes it that really tough division. I think if the Cowboys can come back, this is going to be a tough ask for us this year. Well, even the Commanders, it's going to be a really tight division. So yeah, I'm going to see another 14 wins to top it.
And looking just outside of going off brand or off slightly topic for the episode, which of course focus on the NFC East, outside of the NFC East in the conference, because obviously the Eagles will be expecting to, well, I guess the goal is the Super Bowl, isn't it? That's kind of the minimum requirement if you're the Super Bowl champions, is to get back to the last game of the season. Who are the other teams in the NFL or in the NFC who you think will cause you the biggest trouble?
I want to say the Lions. I do. I always think Detroit, but then the way the teams run, it just feels like they're just constant during the season. There's no rest. It's like the same players every week. They're not getting much of a rotation. So it just seems like they've always got so many injuries during the campaign. The Vikings is one to watch. They made Sam Darnold look like God last year. So if Sam Darnold can do that, then JJ McCarthy's got and if he's been watching what they're doing last year, he's been involved in the playbook. I think the Vikings could have a decent year.
Yeah, I think the Lions are the team. Well, they've just had such a brain drain, haven't they? But they've got all the talent in the world,
Yeah.
on both sides of the ball. There, I would completely agree with you. What's your message to the other writers then for the other 3 teams? Is it come and get us? We're the champions.
Go ahead, touch us if you can try. I mean, Giants, I'll not bother talking to the Giants. What's the point? It's just, I'll include them in the conversation and make them feel good. But Cowboys, I just hope you're ready for the first week. That's all. Let's enjoy it, eh?
And hopefully, well, not for you, but I really like Jaden Daniels. I think he's really good fun to watch. So I was excited to do this episode because I thought, the NFC East, I love the AFC West. Being a fan of the AFC West, I think that's going to be a really competitive division. But other than that, the NFC East is what I will certainly be keeping my eye on this season. Nathan, thank you very, very much. You've been on a few times. Of course, I didn't do the full introduction at the start. Apologies for that. But Nathan
That's
Doyle,
all right. Thank you for having us.
over on X and loads of other sites as well, at Britstone Chum, his own Philadelphia Eagles site as well. So Nathan, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you on once again. Good luck to the Eagles this season. We're going to wrap up the episode here. As always, I've been the host, Philip Marsh. Thank you very much for listening to this episode 15 of the HuddleUK podcast, and we'll catch you in a couple of weeks for another division by division roundup.